everybody, and welcome to Monaghan Presbyterian Church. This is Lincoln.
And this is Janice, and we're changing things up a little bit today.
We are.
Because we are moving indoors a little bit. If you have reservations, that sounds so weird to say that you need a reservation to come to church, but we want to make sure we keep it safe.
Yeah, let us know. Table for two, table for four,
Right, I actually do need to know that information. So with that, and then outdoor worship and indoor being live streamed on Facebook, and the availability of the audio as well from the indoor or outdoor service to be distributed, we're going to change this format up a little bit. We didn't want to see it go, but we realized that there might be room for adult education.
Yeah.
Through this format a little bit as well. So we know people are missing out on Sunday school and topics class especially. So we're gonna pivot a little bit here. And it will still feel the same. We're not gonna have the hymn on the front or the back. We don't think Lincoln Edits will find out what he does with it.
Yeah.
But we want to engage in a similar way, but maybe a little bit more contextual and a little bit more current day with the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be using the same scripture that everything else is using during the week, but engage with it a little bit differently than we have been.
I'd say that's a good explanation of what we were discussing.
Yes. And our precursor or our disclaimer before we even begin is that we might get opinionated. Mm-hmm. And those opinions may not be shared, or they may be something that you are like, wait, I don't really think that. I don't agree with that. We want that feedback. Mm-hmm. We're already recording this in what feels like a vacuum, and we don't want anything we say to be kept in a vacuum. We want you to be part of the conversation as much as you can be. Mm-hmm. And if you want to even come in, I think we could, have somebody safely over there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And have this conversation with us some week. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
So this is our attempt at using this format to talk a little bit more openly about the scripture. Knowing that you'll also get emailed, and we don't have last week's audio to email you today, but we will do that next week. Mm-hmm. Because I forgot to hit record. I'm sorry. Things I forget when you're not here, Lincoln.
I know.
It's terrible. Okay, so our scripture today is Acts 13. And we are doing from 13 to the end. Mm-hmm. There's a lot in the scripture.
There is. A lot of it is, kind of reminiscent of Peter earlier in Acts. Just kind of, I don't want to say rehashing. It sounds kind of, plain in that sense, but just kind of reiterating in a different way, sort of the whole
everything up
message
until this
of the
point.
Good news.
Yeah. And in worship, we're going to really look at the first section of this as it relates to what we normally say in the Great Prayer of Thanksgiving before communion. Mm-hmm. So that's what we'll be doing in worship. So we're going to maybe spend more time around the perimeter as we talk about our scripture today. Mm-hmm. So if you want the actual breakdown of what Paul's message to the people was, check out worship for that. That seem fair?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So we're really going to focus on Paul's audience throughout what he's saying and how they interacted with this message. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we left Paul last week, he did something. And I'm really it just totally blanked my mind.
Yeah. I know they're traveling and John went back to Jerusalem.
Why do I bring us back to a point if I can't, it literally... Oh, the king, Sergius.
Oh, yes, the magician. There you go.
The magician, Bar-Jesus, and Sergius.
Mm-hmm.
And we get no feedback on what happens to Bar-Jesus. Does he ever get his sight back? Does he get let out of that space? Does Sergius then take him under his wing and help open up the Gospels to him? We don't know.
No.
We don't know.
You can write fan fiction about that.
Hey, I wonder if there is Bible fan fiction like that, where they fill in some of the gaps. Obviously, it would be, not canon in any way. But I wonder if it exists. I wonder if all those places where I'm like, I would love more information about this. If somebody actually wrote it, obviously it wouldn't be true, but it would be really funny.
Yeah.
I would like that. If anybody's out there and you have a lot of time on your hands, that would be a great direction. So we pick up with Paul and his companions, and they are going all over the place.
Yeah.
They're in Antioch.
Yeah, they end up in Antioch.
Yeah.
Which is where all of this happens.
Yes. And they go to the synagogue, and, they listen, and they get a note, and, they get a message. And Paul then stands up, and he begins to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene is he's in a synagogue with, all the faithful people. And he's invited to speak. And that is brave, as somebody who has regretted inviting people to speak sometimes in front of a congregation.
Yeah.
That's brave. You never know what somebody's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul says a lot.
Yeah, and kind of like Peter, I don't think it's as harsh.
Not until after he finishes speaking.
Right.
This main part. This is really... Okay, you guys know the scriptures. You know about this. You know about God. You know about, Abraham. You know about the judges. And you know about the kings. And you know about David. And you know what happened to all of them. And you know the prophets. And well, then I'm going to tell you some stuff about Jesus. And that's kind of his message there. He's like, You guys all know this part.
Yep. This
Jesus guy, well, all those times where they kept telling you stuff like about God and things that, how God talks and shares and, about this one who would be coming. Well, this guy John talks about that. And he even mentions John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. And it's this is when we hear Paul's conversion story, if you think about it. This is the first time since his conversion we're hearing how he has now come to understand the message.
True.
So this is his story. Mm-hmm. So he's talking to his people, if you think about it. Guys, you're good Jews, like I am. Like I was, or I am, or I think we're called Christians now, but same thing. You know this. You know the faithfulness of God. You know all of these things, and now here you are. And I think that's pretty cool that we get Paul's story there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't continue very good. So that's what we want to talk about. More specifically, I think, is what happens after he finishes talking and sharing the story.
Mm-hmm.
People invite him to come back.
Yeah, they were really interested. Like, they seemed interested, and they said, hey, nice TED Talk. Come back next week.
I think it might have been too long for a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, come back next week. That's like the highest praise a preacher will ever get. You can come back next week too.
You mean a preacher
I've never
that's not
heard. that.
employed.
Yeah. No, even when you are employed, if somebody says you can come back next week, it still feels good.
Oh, okay.
It feels good. Yeah, come back next week. Tell us more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the good news of part of the story ends and another chapter begins almost.
Well, it depends on your definition of the good news in
Yeah.
this case, because
Yeah.
so then, word spreads about, this thing that happened, and, it's coming again next weekend. And
Yeah, people start to talk.
Mhm.
That's usually when things get destroyed. It's when people start talking. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, people start to talk in a crowd. People want to know what's going on.
Mhm.
And in this case, well, again, it depends on who you ask. That's a good thing.
Well, so the end result is, the next weekend when everybody gathers at the synagogue, you have all the Jews and devout converts to Judaism, but then, it's not just the congregation. It turns into a much larger, almost rally, because all of these Gentiles show up.
Oh,
And Paul's down with it. He was like, "Hey, this is for you too. It's for everybody here."
yeah, the gospel's big enough for everybody.
Yeah. And
That doesn't go over well.
no, the Jews are not impressed.
And this is what we really want to get into, is this the established religious people liked something that they heard and they got excited about it, but then outsiders came
Mhm.
and they didn't necessarily want to have them be part of it.
Yeah.
And they kind of turned on Paul because of it.
Mhm.
That doesn't sound like anything people now would do. And I don't even mean just church in general. In life, I can think of time like watching kids play sometimes. Kids are playing with something, then somebody else comes along to play, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to play with that anymore now because they're here.
Mhm.
We get like that. We get very possessive. No, this is for me. This isn't for you.
Right.
This is mine.
It is. I was reading a book recently. It is tribalism,
It is.
where you belong. In this case, the Jews belong to a tribe, a group of people that had similar beliefs, and they were happy in their little bubble. And then a tribe that was not theirs came along, and now it's like, whoa, 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 no, this is our thing. You can't have our thing.
Right. In addition to all the other differences that they had with the Gentiles, the
Right.
circumcision and the food laws and all of those things compounded the situation, as we've looked at over the past few weeks in, I want to say, chapters 10 through 12, 10 through 11, 10 through 12.
Yeah.
And there we really have looked at those ideas that, being all in means being willing to have everybody else all in too. Like welcoming other people. And I don't think we as a society or as people are good at that always.
No, and it is easy for us to be played, I will say, because, sometimes it's unintentional and, well-meaning, but sometimes it is used to exploit a certain advantage, to rally people in a certain way. And, so you play off of that tribalism, off of that, oh, I don't, I'm not so sure about the other. I'm not so sure that, this is something that I want to share with with that group.
Yeah, and I think our society has gotten very hyper focused on the things that separate us. And I feel like I'm stealing a quote from the show The West Wing right now, but I think it's true as well. I hear a lot more talk about enemies than I think I used to. Again, I feel like that was a direct quote from the show, but I see it.
Yeah.
You know, especially in this election cycle. I know I said the word election cycle. Everybody gets scared now, but I see it. People are enemies.
It has become very tribal. It has become very us versus them. It has become almost, I mean, it's just like, you know, I mean, it's almost become like a battle in a war. It is this side versus that side, and only one can survive.
Yeah, it feels that way. And the story that's being shared there, it's all spun, and I think in some ways that talk of enemies has made us feel like we're enemies with one another, instead of realizing that it's when we work together to solve problems that we can actually solve them. But if we're so focused on being torn apart and having something to destroy, we can't build up.
Right. And it's the idea that you have, well, this is my way, and my way is the right way, therefore you are wrong. And we saw, not as much in this passage, but we saw, just a couple chapters ago with Peter's first conversation with Gentiles and conversion of Gentiles, where they clearly are not, they are the other.
Yeah.
In so many ways you could think about it.
Yeah.
But instead of it being combative, it was I understand that you are different, and I understand that you come from a different nationality, background, whatever. But you are still welcome to this table. And like, that was a message that was, sort of foundational to the early church. Where is that message today?
I don't know. Do we need a cloth of food drop down to help us to see that? We might.
That would totally trend on social media, but don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. So how do we do that? Because we see it not end well here in this passage. The Jews get angry. I'm guessing then that their conversion doesn't fully happen. They don't, they're blinded then by the whataboutisms and the division, that they don't get to accept Jesus as Messiah in this moment. And look what happened because of our division. Look what happened because we, and I'm going to say we here because we are guilty of this. Maybe not in that moment, but we are guilty. Our division allowed a chasm to form that stopped people from knowing Jesus. And how often is that true today? I mean, this has been a building idea in Acts in the last chapter or so, is, what have I done to either help somebody come to know Jesus, or what might I have done to push somebody away from Jesus?
Well, and that's one of the challenging things I see in today's sort of battle among the tribes, that you can have people who our believers are faithful on both sides, but those beliefs are being played upon, you know. Oh,
Manipulated.
well, you manipulated, yes, you believe this thing, and this thing is more important than any other thing you could possibly believe, and that's the hill you have to die on.
Yeah.
When, at no point in any of this journey through Acts have we seen that's how the early church was built.
Yeah. Yeah. It was about relation. It was about community. It was bringing people in and teaching them about the love of Jesus. And, again, I'm gonna talk about this election cycle. It's, the idea that there aren't religious people on one side and all the religious people are on the other side. And even just that kind of talk is destructive to those who might think differently.
Mm-hmm.
It would show them that there isn't room in the church for them. So even how we talk about faith within this election cycle, we are pushing vast portions of our population farther and farther away from Jesus, farther and farther away from the church. And that doesn't mean farther away from the principles of loving others, but farther from this idea of church that we have. If all we have is that fighting between people that, well, if you believe that, or if you think that, you can't be a follower of Christ. Well, I would disagree with that. And we talked about this weeks ago. Are we building a bigger table to make room for those who we may not agree with?
Mm-hmm.
Is our God big enough to be loved by people that we may not see eye to eye with? This part of this passage is just so eye-opening about where we have gotten ourselves to as faithful people in this moment. If you are unchurched or hurt by church, where are you seeing God in this election cycle? Where are you seeing faithful people? Where are you seeing grace and mercy, humility, kindness? Where are you seeing the care for the poor and the widow and the orphan? That's what Jesus said in Matthew 25. Where when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was sick, you visited me. That's how we show people and introduce people to the love of Christ. And I'm seeing glimpses of that, but it's not what's getting the main attention in this election. We have to fight with each other about our disagreements and not focus on loving everyone.
Well, that's something that I've been chewing on of late is there is a role that we play in things like elections, but is that where we need to be investing all of our time? I think about last week with Sergius, politician of sorts, I guess.
Proconsul, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, the way he was seeking and, you know, what that engagement did versus, you know, the week before with, you know, Herod, because nobody good is named Herod except you. You're fine.
Whoever you are fine.
But, you know, there was somebody who was in charge who was not seeking. And they're like, and the story was not about, you know, Peter or the disciples trying to go and reason with him. It was, you know, they're not even there. They're not trying to engage with that system at all. They are elsewhere.
No, Peter went and hid.
Right. And, you know, even this week, you know, sure, you had the Jews were interested in what was being said, but then when they realized that it applied to more than just their little group, then it was like, no, we don't want anything to do with that. And Peter and Barnabas, you know, it's just like the story of the however many were sent out when you come someplace, if they don't, you know, if you don't want to, dust off your sandals and move on.
Yeah.
So, and should we be investing as much time as we are in this ideological struggle of, you know, these two tribes?
No. Our time and energy should be focused on loving God and loving one another.
And demonstrating that.
Because then people will know of the love of God through us. You know, that's what it all comes down to is, are you living in a way that others will pick up on the love of God that's coming from you and want to know more? And I can't say that's always true for me.
Certainly not for me.
Yeah, I was trying to make myself sound a little better there, but yeah.
I make no, you know, I do not equivocate at all. I am, you know.
Sometimes the parent pickup line brings out the worst in me, but.
Just being a parent sometimes brings out the worst in me, so.
I have no comment on the grounds of I have no comment. But yeah, I mean, that's where our energy, our love, our focus should be, is living, seeking Jesus, seeking God. And if we're really doing that, then we're loving our neighbor deeply and completely. And I think if we're focused on that, we won't be so much focused on the things that divide and seek to destroy. We will be so much more focused on unification and hope.
But it can be an issue-based love, right?
No.
No? Really?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Unless I didn't understand your question.
No. Well, I mean, you know, you only love those people that agree with you on various issues, and you know.
No, you're supposed to love everybody.
Okay. I mean, that's sort of what I, you know, am picking up from.
Okay, we got to go back into this. Who is your neighbor? Do we need to go through this story? Do we need to tell this parable right now? Who is your neighbor? Everyone. How are you supposed to love everyone? How are you supposed to love your neighbor? With all that you are. So, if we're loving our neighbors, are we, you know, judging what signs they have in their yards? Oh, that wouldn't even hurt me just to say it. I just held the mirror up to myself. And, you know, are we reading bumper stickers and going, really? If we are really loving our neighbor, then we wouldn't find so many reasons to disagree with them, I think. I think sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I think this system of government we have wants us to be divided and at odds with each other. And I think for the most part, we might have more in common with our neighbors than our political and religious ideologies might suggest. But that's going to take some courage to find out. It's going to take some, humility and some love and some mercy to find out.
I don't love you for what you believe. I love you in spite of what you believe.
How about I just love you and the rest is noise? How many families are being torn apart over disagreements about stuff? Though I will fully say once more that wearing a mask shows that you love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. I will just reiterate that. That one for me is not up for discussion, but I know that might make some people upset. That is how we show love right now. Mm-hmm. But I've been saying that since March, April.
Yeah.
Is it still October? I don't even know anymore.
Time has no meaning.
It has no meaning. Somebody said that they were grateful for the end of the week, and I'm like, week's end? I'm not really sure what's different about a Monday and a Saturday anymore. It just seems all the same to me.
Yeah, I saw, a meme on some social media platform about, we're going to be having the time change soon, and maybe can we just
never do it again? Sorry.
Can we just jump ahead 2.5 months and see what's in 2021?
Okay, I just want to warn us all. A lot of the problems we're having in 2020 are not magically going to go away in January or February.
No.
I'm sorry.
Let's hope we don't get any more.
That's going to be hard. And if you're listening, that's going to be hard. This winter, I think, is going to be really emotionally hard on a lot of people. And, one of the reasons why we don't just want to give up this podcast is because we still want to be able to come into your home and let you not feel as alone and isolated, especially if as the weather gets colder and the weather turns. We know it's going to be hard. So we're trying to come up with ways to make sure we all feel connected in some way. I have some other ideas that are coming out, so keep your eyes open for that as well. Mm-hmm. And if you need, if you need to chat, we're here. So yeah, I'm a little concerned about winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that just totally changed our subject, so.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I think that's kind of, where we're at with this one.
Mm-hmm.
We saw in this passage that not everybody was loving and accepting of other people, and I think we need to learn from that we need to be loving and accepting and see what unites us and not always what divides us. Okay? So we always want your feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. This may not have felt that much different than what we were doing, but we're probably going to get more into that. How do you apply the scriptures? How can we see them today? Mm-hmm. And in this format. So keep tuning in.
Yeah.
And I have no way to end right now. So thank you.
Yeah. We'll just say goodbye.
Goodbye.